Well, let me see. I guess. You mean what was
What does
we?
that mean?
Does that mean? We used to have spelling bees every Friday, and then that kind of thing. And we'd have
I would say that would be like, to me, Grace, that's like your
Like your
family
religion and stuff?
were farmers. And
well, yeah, they were all
mean, that's-
farmers, and we had one big well, and in the country, and it was in the middle. This man, he just he had dug the well for his cattle, and it was open range. You didn't have to put up a fence. But when the farmers came in and they started planting crops, why, his cows would eat the crops. So he built fences, and everybody was farmers. And the first thing you had to do when you moved, when there was early settlers, you had to dig a dugout on account of the prairie fires. There wasn't anything to stop them. Once they'd start across there, they'd just go, and if you was down in the cellar, they'd just go over top of you. So that's the first thing they had to do.
How did they build the dugout that you live in? I mean, they just dug a hole under the ground?
Yeah.
And then what did they cover the top of it with?
Well, at that time, Forgan wasn't there, but Liberal was there, and the farmers would take turnabout coming up here and getting wood, and they would cover the dugouts had a wood top, but they'd put dirt on top of it.
Right. So, and then you'd have to go down the steps, but
Yeah,
you'd have.
and that's where we lived.
And how
Yeah.
many rooms were in the dugout?
Well, just one great big room. One great big room.
And then you had to have an outhouse for the bathroom, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you had a.
So you had to
we-
go back outside?
Yeah. And we had a place where you went down into the dugout, and then at the back, you had another door and another bunch of steps in case there was a fire down there and you had to get out.
And then
That was, they made that a rule.
did
had
you
to
have beds to lay on, or did you just sleep on the floor?
No, we had what we call bed ticks. They were, we was raising corn, and when we would take the shucks off of the corn, we would put that in there and sleep on them.
You sleep on the corn shucks
Yeah.
with a
Uh-huh,
blanket
and-
over the top of it?
Yeah. Well, Mom would she would make it where you just put it inside, you know. But we slept on those corn shucks for until she got where she could raise chickens, and then we had feather beds. And we was
But you didn't have running water, did you?
we had our house was the first running water in the country because Dad had dug a well up on the hill, and our house was down here. And you can see on that picture that Jeanne drew, our house was down there. And Dad, he was able to buy piping, and it would go down through Mom's garden. And she always had a big garden, and into the house. So we had the first running water in the country after we got our well.
That's cool.
And
Now, were the culture part of it might mean, was everybody white that lived in the area? Or
Yeah.
were there different,
You didn't have like
were there black people?
Black people?
there was
Or
no black
Mexicans?
people. I never saw black people. The first black people I saw was, well, it was after Doris was born, and she was born in 1925, I believe. And we come to Liberal, and they had built that big hotel, you know, where they had and those people brought in their workers, and they were all black.
And how old were you when you first saw a black person?
Well, I was probably 13.
And there were no Spanish people living in the
No
area?
Spanish
all.
people at all. And they were all white people until the colored people came in with that big thing that they built up there, that motel.
So when were you born?
1913, July the 20th, 1913.
Is that all?
And there was seven of us, 5 boys and 2 girls.
But
And
everybody had big families, didn't they? Or
yeah, they all had, and they all gave birth to their first children in a dugout, which, and you'd have to haul water from that one big well that this man, I can't think of his name now, he was real good to the farmers, and he started helping to put up fences, and he let them use, we called it the big well, and they'd have barrels, go over there and fill their barrels and bring them back, and we had to be real careful about how we used our water. We had that until a well driller came in, and he started drilling wells for each family, and he was relation to the Rushtians. He was a a brother-in-law to the Rushtians, and he had a well digger. That's when we got our well.
Okay. The changes, like the changes where you lived from then and now. What changes are there?
Well, it was quite a change, but we was so used to, when we got the big school, we felt like that we had really, we had really come up in the world. And so we had that big school, and we would go and play baseball was our main thing. We'd go play baseball with the schools around us that had consolidated. And they had big schools too. And and then we built school buses. Farmers built school buses out of just whatever they had to pick up. But if you lived within 2 miles of the schoolhouse, you had to walk. You couldn't ride the school bus. And so I was pretty small. I'd have to walk across that field when it was snow or anything else, and to get to school. But we was used to it. And we thought that was about the only way to go.
What about the telephone?
Well, telephones, I was trying to think what year they come in. Now, my aunt lived up in Colorado, and her sister, they each had a telephone, had gotten a hold of a telephone, and they run a line from her house to Aunt Florence's, and they could talk to each other over the phone, and that was the only phones there. But